Hey y'all, it's Miriam, and today we're going over this painting, or this one. I'm not sure which side it's going to show up on, but we're going over this painting today, and I'm going to take you through the process, starting with the reference photo. So let's get right into it. All right, so here was attempt number one, and there's a big reason why I didn't like this photo. There's a saying, if it bends, don't chop it off. And I've chopped off my elbows here, which doesn't make for great composition. So I switched it up and I came up with this one. Now, composition wise, this one feels a lot stronger to me personally. Now, you can see I've kind of tilted the angle a bit so that I could keep my elbows in. And yeah, the other thing I want to point out is I'm in my bathroom taking this, in the guest bathroom. And the reason why is because there is overhead lighting in there and it's super easy. I didn't feel like pulling out my whole lighting setup. And I really like dramatic shadows. And typically, people's bathrooms give them that as long as you get close enough under the overhead lights. And just a quick note, because people always like to ask, why am I always so sad in my photos? Well, I like to think of my pictures as a visual diary, and this just captured the mood of the day. So, yeah. All right, and last thing I'll point out, this was actually a live photo, and you can see the reference that I ended up using wasn't the original picture. I pulled that from the live photo. This is something that I always like to do, either take a live photo or I'll actually use video for the reference. I just find it really helpful to get all those little micro expressions you might want to capture. All right. And if you know me and if you've been around here a while, you know I hate drawing and hate sketching stuff out. But I did go ahead and do a very rough sketch of this one because all I had with me were 16 by 20 canvases. And for this particular reference, it's really tall and not so wide, which was going to leave me with a lot of white space on the sides of my canvas. So I just wanted to draw something out real quick and see if I can somehow extend the border of the portrait to fill up a little more of the space. And this is what I came up with, some sort of box. And I kind of like that it gave some added dimensionality there. So that's what we're going with. After that, I used my favorite acrylic ink. This is the Holbein brand, and this is super opaque black. Now, what I'm going to aim to do is mark out all of the borders, so the perimeter of the shadow shapes. Now, I'm not being exact here at all. This is really rough, and I want it to be that way because I want these drips and I want everything to show through in the final product. There is just one main area where I am being really careful to avoid, and that is the middle of the forehead and the center down the nose. Now, why? Because if you remember, the lighting in this is that overhead central bathroom lighting. So I know all of my highlights and all of my light is going to be placed pretty centrally. So I don't really want to fight with a big black line of ink going right down the center of the nose or down the center of the forehead. Now I grab a paintbrush and all I'm going to do is finish marking out the perimeter of my major shapes. Now I know it looks like I'm just kind of scribbling around here, but if you look back at the reference photo, you should be able to see the major shapes like the arms and the neck that I'm blocking out. All right, here's a quick freeze frame of what I call step one. Now, I did pause here to do a quick sanity check. So I took this picture, I overlaid it in Photoshop with my reference photo just to make sure I wasn't missing any major proportions or I wasn't off in any major areas. And I was actually pretty spot on, so I was happy with it. And now I'm ready to block in the smaller shapes such as the nose and the hands and really just start getting into where I'm going to put all of my features. Now that we have everything in place, it's time for the fun part. It's time to break out the oils, and this is where I take everything from simple shape to form. Now, why am I using oils for this part? One, specifically for the transparency transparency of them. I'm really able to play with all of the opacity levels. You can see the paint that I'm going in with here is actually pretty opaque, but watch what happens once I get into the mouth. You can see I have made that really transparent. And even up on the forehead we're about to get into, you'll see just really how transparent that paint is. You can see all the marks underneath. And I like to be able to control that. I like to be able to show everything underneath when I want to and cover it up when I don't want to show it. And oils is really, there's nothing else like it that gives you that level of choice. This process is slow, very slow, but also really fun. And it forces you to think about the underlying simple shapes that make up your portrait. When you're painting like this, I can't stress how important it is to have a really clear sense of form and shape. And if you guys are struggling with that, this may be a fun exercise for you to try. The colors that I'm using for this are titanium white and ivory black. So just the two colors with the oil paint, but I'm actually able to get multiple color temperatures out of them. When I mix my titanium white with the ivory black, I get a cool bluish gray that you guys can see there. When I do the ivory black alone mixed with a little bit of medium, I get a warm gray. So it's really fun when you get to play with those different color temperatures. You can even see up in the forehead there on the sides of the face, I have a warmer gray, whereas when we get into the middle of the forehead, it's a much cooler gray. Now, also, I want to point out, I'm just using these two colors here, and also, I wanted to do this one because we don't have a very fancy lighting setup. I'm just using my bathroom light. I've taken the picture on my iPhone. You don't need fancy camera equipment. You don't need advanced color theory. You can make a pretty cool portrait just with simple materials you probably already have at home. The other cool thing about this method, and starting to think about form so early on when you're filling in these spaces, is that you could pretty much stop at any time. I could have stopped an hour ago on this portrait and still had a really cool painting to show. I'm just being pretty nitpicky here and going in and seeing just how far I can push some of these areas. Now, the other thing that I want to point out is that it can be really easy to get attached to your underlying layers. I do that all the time. I will make bad decisions because I want to preserve the stuff underneath rather than just doing what's right for the portrait and covering it up. It's really hard, especially when you like the stuff underneath. All right, we're getting to the end here. You can see I'm adding in that background. And yeah, this was overall a pretty simple portrait, but one that I feel like really captured my mood of the day. And yeah, it was really fun to do. If you guys have any questions, let me know. Bye.